Hi friends, it's Gwen. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am sharing one of my all-time favorite videos with you, and that is my best and worst of the year. Basically done this since 2015. I joined BookTube in 2014, but I just didn't really get my footing. I didn't know like what type of videos people made or what I wanted to do. I was just getting my footing. So I started with best and worst of 2015. I did a best and worst of 2016, a best and worst of 2017. I also in 2017 did a best and worst of 2017 poetry edition. Now in 2018, I decided to deviate for some reason, and I did a worst of 2018 and a best of 2018, but I'm bringing it back to the original, the best and worst of the year, all in one video. I think I enjoy this format the best. I just want to let you know that this is also, even though it's my favorite or like one of my favorite videos to share with you guys and like compile and think about, it's the hardest because there's so much thought that goes into picking your favorites. Choosing the worst isn't that hard. I go basically off of like my rating and stuff like that. But when you have more than like 10 5-star reviews, then you're taking all of those 5-star ratings and ranking them and pulling your 10 favorites. There's some I knew for a very long time that were going to be on my favorites, and then there's some that I was like, but I just read them, and are they better than the ones that I had on my list previously? It's a very long process, and I think what I'm gonna do is what a lot of people did, or I noticed a lot of people did this year, and they only read new stuff like the first 2 weeks, or maybe not at all, and then they just reread in December. And I tried to do that at the very end because in December I was reading some really good books, and I was like, OMG, what am I gonna do when it comes to best and worst? So I think in December 2020, I'm just going to reread. I think that will be really fun. I'm not 100% sure I'm going to stick with it, but that is the plan. Let's get into the worst of 2019, starting from the meh to the yuck. I don't have any of my worst to show you because I have unhauled all of those books, so I'm really happy about that. Popping in pictures of this, I read another book by these authors and I loved it, so when I went into this, it was just average. I rated it 3 stars. Next up on this list, coming in at number 9, is A House at the Bottom of the Lake. It was a super short novella that I had high hopes for, and it was just weird. Nothing really happened. It had a great story idea, but nothing happened. And the ending was just weird. I don't think I understood it, so that's why it's at 9 on this list. Coming in at number 8 is The Female of the Species. A lot of people were highly praising this because of the subject matter that it tackles, rape culture, but I think it was like counterintuitive, and it actually featured a lot of like girl on girl hate, and I just don't think the message was as strong as it needed to be in a book like that. All of those books I rated 3 out of 5 stars. That's why they're 10, 9, and 8. Coming in at number 7 on this list is 99% Mine by Sally Thorne. I was really looking forward to this, and the dialogue was so cheesy, and it was just, it felt like a different author wrote this than The Hating Game because it was just so, like, the writing was night and day. So next up on my list, coming in at number 6 on this list, is Today Will Be Different. I picked this up on a whim, but I still thought I would really enjoy it when I read the synopsis. And again, it was just boring. It was bland. I didn't get it. What was the point? I'm not sure. Next up on this list is The Birthday Girl, which I so kindly received from the publisher to give some like early hype, but I was so nervous after I read it that I just like didn't feel almost comfortable posting my review, but I did. This book really relies on fooling the reader, and I hate that. I felt like it was a cheap cop-out. It could have been so much better. Considering I was fooled, It worked, I guess, but it was just slow moving, and yeah, I didn't like it. Okay, next up on the list is Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. I went into this thinking that I was going to enjoy it because I've been hearing nothing but rave reviews about it. I don't think I quite knew it was sci-fi, which was my own fault. But Blake Crouch, The Pines, I'm very familiar with that trilogy and that show. I think they made a show of it, so I should have known it was sci-fi, but I didn't. I just thought it was going to be a thriller, and even after I started reading it, it felt so repetitive to me, and the dialogue again was really cheesy, and I just don't think it sent as strong as of a message than it could have. Next up is The Price Guide to the Occult. This is one that the cover design at first threw me off. I was never going to pick it up, but I think I picked it up on like Book Outlet for really cheap, and I read it thinking it was going to give me those like witchy vibes that I really wanted, and there were like a slight handful of things, like the descriptions were really cool, but other than that, the story made absolutely no sense, and it almost felt like a middle grade story trying to be YA. Yeah, I just didn't really like it. So all of those, 99% mine, Today Will Be Different, The Birthday Girl, Dark Matter, and The Price Guide to the Occult, all of those received 2 out of 5 stars. Next book I'm going to talk to you about, coming in at number 2 on this list, is Grey Wolf Island. I've talked about this quite a few times, especially because I'm trying to get other people to read it to hopefully, like, I don't know, put more reviews out there, like one way or another. I left this book unrated just because I don't feel like I understood it. I think it was trying to be magical realism, and it kind of gave me like, I don't know, it did seem really cool, like going to this island looking for a treasure, but like it just wasn't that interesting, and like the things that happened when they were on the island weren't cool. Like, I don't know how to explain it. I think I was just like completely bored, and the parts that seemed like they should be interesting, I don't think I understood. But the worst book I read in 2019, and it took me a very long time to read it, is Tell Me Lies. And I did do a full book review on this book, how bad it was and how much I hated it. Like, I cannot tell you how much I hated these characters. The characters were terrible. The plot was terrible. Everything about this was terrible. Run away from this book. That's enough of my worst books of 2019. Now let's jump into the very fluid best of 2019. Now, I did kind of cheat, and I chose 2 honorable mentions because they're not books. For my graphic novel comics best, I am choosing Pumpkinheads by Rainbow Rowell. I did do As If This Is Worth the Hype. I think it is. The artwork is great, and I just loved the friendship and the romance and just like the overall fun like adventure that happens in like 24 hours in this book. So I really liked it. It gave me fall vibes. I love fall, so I was all about this. And then my favorite poetry collection of the year is one that I just read this month, and it's The Shades of Missing You by Veronica Togalevi, and I can't wait to read more from her. Again, I'm going to try to do a standalone review for this because I want to bring more like attention to this collection of poetry. Okay, so now that I've got my honorable mentions out of the way, let's jump into my favorite books of 2019. Coming in at number 10 is a book I read way earlier on in the year, and that is Serious Moonlight by Jen Bennett. It's no surprise that I absolutely love Jen Bennett's YA contemporary stories. What stood out to me about this one, they always have like cute little romances in them, but what stood out to me about this one is our main character loves mystery novels and sleuths, and it kind of had that vibe to it like throughout. And at the beginning of every chapter, it has like little quotes and stuff like that from like mystery books and movies and stuff like that. And the main character, well, the male love interest Daniel, is just like so sweet, such a cinnamon roll, such a good person, and I just really ship these 2 characters together. So they meet at a really like awkward thing, and then they end up working together, and then they're trying to solve this mystery. And it takes place in Seattle, and that's a place I've always wanted to go, so just like the mood and stuff like that, I just loved it. So if you're looking for like a very light mystery romance story, YA, I would recommend this. I know that Chasing Lucky is coming out and it's going to be her last of like this 5-book YA book contract that she signs, and I'm really sad about it because I love this kind of stuff. Next up on the list is The Turn of the Key by Ruth Ware. I've read all of Ruth Ware's books that are currently published, and this is by far my absolute favorite. I love how it's told, where it starts like the main character is writing letters to like a lawyer about like this child's death, and she's being accused of the murder and all of this, and then it kind of goes back where she accepts this job as a nanny in this like smart home. And it's just, the characters are really cool and it keeps you guessing, and it's kind of like creepy, and it like, I don't know, I was just like on the edge of my seat, and it's the first Ruth Ware book I have ever given more than 3 stars. So that's why it had to be on this list. Coming in at number 8, it's going to be a huge shock that this is so far down on this list, because you will see that this is one of my all-time favorite authors. I think it's on this list because I had to read it or listen to it on audiobook to really appreciate it. And I'm talking about Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I was really thinking that this was going to be like number 1 or number 2 on my best books of the year. But when I really had to sit down and like analyze, like, okay, you have to put these in order from 1, like your very favorite of the year, to like your 10th favorite of the year. This just fell further down on the list in the number 8 spot because I never read this book physically. Well, I don't say, I listened to it and followed along in the physical copy, and I loved it, like no question about it. But I think if I would have just read it, I would not have enjoyed it as much as I did. However, since I was hearing reviews that like the reading experience wasn't that great unless you listen to the audiobook, I loved the audio cast. I loved the gravel of the voice of Daisy Jones's character on there. I also like love Rolling Stones and that movie Almost Famous, and this totally gave me those vibes. So I really loved this book, but the only reason it's, like I said, low on my list is because that I had to listen to it on audio to really appreciate it. It follows this band in the 1970s, the Six, and this character Daisy Jones here joins the band, and it's kind of the relationship between the band and Daisy Jones and the lead singer songwriter of the band. Yeah, if you're reading this and you want more, watch A Star is Born, or if you've watched A Star is Born and you want more, like read this. But yeah, I really loved it, and I think it's so funny that people are like, are Daisy Jones and the Six a real band? Like, that's how well it was written, and it did win the Book of the Month, Book of the Year, so I'm not surprised at all. I need to kind of pause because this is where things get a little flexible in my top 10. I will definitely say like these 3 are my bottom, and then like my top 2 are definitely my top, but like everything in between is kind of like, I don't know if this is this number or not, because all of these books are super amazing. And I'm always hesitant to, like, I read Daisy Jones and the Six like way back in the year. I read this, you know, far enough back in the year, and I read Serious Moonlight like way back in the year. So I feel like I've had enough time to like sit on the characters, sit on the story, and they've remained a favorite all year. You know what I'm saying? Some of these books coming up, I literally just read, but they were 5 stars and I loved them so much, and they're on this list, but they're lower down on the list because like I haven't had time to sit with them, and if I have like 6 months to sit with them, are they still going to be on this list? So this is where things get a little fluid, and I also prioritized some books above books for certain reasons, which we'll get into. Let me just show you the books. Coming in at number 7 on this list, crazy, is Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren. I literally just read this month. It just meant so much to me, and it began the process in my own head to sort through some feelings I was having, and then other things happened this month that like also touched on the subject matter of this book, and it just made for such like an interesting read. But it's basically like this woman is in a spot in her life. She's working at a good job, she's with a great guy, she's planning her marriage and about to move on into the next chapter of her life, but she bumps into her childhood first love, and it's her first love. So obviously there's always going to be that connection, and it's like, okay, so what do I do about this connection? And it's told in then and now chapters, and it's so sweet and heartbreaking and just everything. But it also deals with the main character lost her mother when she was younger, and her mom left her dad this list, like, when she's this age, like, talk about these things, or when this happens, do this. So it's also like this girl growing up without her mother and her relationship with her father. Even though that's not like a focus, it's still there, and it's very important to me because I have a very special relationship with my father. So yeah, I really loved this one, you guys. And at number 6 on this list is another book I just read, and it is Regretting You by Colleen Hoover. I just talked about these books in my December wrap up, so if you're wanting more thoughts, check out that video if you haven't already watched it. This one is another one that I just read this month, and it made such an impact, but they're a little bit further down on the list than some of the other ones, because they also have like, it has like YA point of views or YA characters, and the other ones are more adult, and obviously I'm an adult, so I prioritized those a little bit higher on the list. Regretting You is about, it starts in chapter 1 with one of our main characters, Morgan, finding out she's pregnant, and then in chapter 2 and the rest of the novel is 17 years later, and it's told in alternating chapters between Morgan and her 16-year-old daughter Clara, and then how they're always butting heads, they're always conflicting, and I think that's just like normal teenage daughter and mother vibe. The father, Chris, is always like the anchor, but then there's this terrible accident that leaves lots of questions, and Morgan finds things out about Chris that she doesn't want to tell the daughter, and it's just about grief and loss and finding your way through things after a horrific accident like that. And it's also like romance and stuff like that, and I really liked it so much, you guys. Coming in at number 5 on this list, and these were also still very hard to put at like 5 and 4 and all that, is Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating by Christina Lauren. So I put this a little bit higher than like say this, because like this is adult and this is, it feels like half YA because half the story is told in then parts. This is the friends to lovers trope that I'm sure you guys have heard about. I loved Hazel's character because she was quirky and goofy and like a realistic way. She basically forces herself on Josh as like his new best friend. They end up rooming together because Hazel's apartment gets flooded and all of this, and she sees that Josh is moping around. They decide to start setting each other up on these blind dates, and then every time they go on these blind dates, all they do is like hate the dates but love hanging out together, and they kind of realize like maybe there's more to me and you than just like this friendship thing. Oh my god, it's so good. And at number 4 on this list, I get sick of me talking about these authors, is the Unnie Mooners by Christina Lauren. Obviously, I discovered Christina Lauren this year, and they have been like new favorites. I knew like these were gonna be on my list for a very long time. This is the enemies to lovers story about Olive and Ethan, and Olive twin sister got married to Ethan's brother. Everybody at the wedding party got sick, so they get offered to take their honeymoon because it was like a prize won, and it's just basically forfeited, and they decide to take it, and they have to pretend like they're the newlyweds. And the banter back and forth between these characters is so witty and so well done. I really like this couple. So yeah, another really good one. Coming in at number 3 on this list is The One by John Mars, another very recent read, and I think it's on this list not because of the characters, although the characters, there was a very well done character study of 5 different characters, morals and their values as they find their match. This is the one that you can take a DNA test and find the person you're genetically made for, and you follow 5 very different people and they have been matched and what happens because of that. It's just so interesting, like the characters are, but more than that, it was like the very unique story idea. But more than that, the reason why it's this high on the list is because of how it was written. They could have easily chosen the 5 characters and all of that and put it in parts, but instead they told it in alternating chapters. So it was like, you'd read about this person, then the next person, then the next person, then the next person, and then you start over again. And every single storyline, every single person's journey was just as interesting. Every chapter, it felt like a little mini cliffhanger that you like wanted to get back to their story, but every single perspective was like that, so you just had to keep reading. So my heart was pumping the entire time that I read this. I think the whole Christopher thing was one of my favorites. I also really liked Mandy's and Nick's. I think those were like my favorites, but the ones that kind of were like super crazy that I wasn't expecting was Ellie's. So yeah, I really enjoyed this. I highly recommend it. Also, it's sci-fi and it blew me away, so that's saying something, and that's why this is in the number 3 spot of my best of 2019 list. Okay, so I know you're probably expecting to see these on this list. I know you are, because I know you guys know me like that. You call it all the time. Okay, coming in at number 2 on this list is No Exit by Taylor Adams. I've talked about this book until I'm blue in the face. It was on my most surprising books of the year list, along with The One by John Mars. This was on that list because I don't read a lot of male authors. I want to definitely reread this book in 2020 just to like confirm my love for it. Let me try to explain. So it's a thriller story about a girl that's trying to go home because her mom's sick, and she gets caught in this snowstorm and has to stop at this rest stop. And then while she's there, she basically gets snowed in this rest stop with a handful of other people that are also trapped there. And while she's out trying to get cell service, she sees a girl in like an animal cage in the back of a van. So she knows that someone has like kidnapped this girl and holding her hostage in the back of her van. And she's like, holy crap, I'm obviously here with the person that this van belongs to. Like, I need to figure out who it is. And she also wants to try to rescue the girl. When you're screaming things at the TV, like, try this, do that, you know, whatever. This character actually tries things that like a normal human being would try if they were very brave. Like, she actually tries to rescue her. Like, she knows she wants to rescue her, and she like tries different things, and she tries to find out who, and then like as things happen, she is really doing things that like you would be yelling at her to do or thinking, try this, duh. You know, like that is what happens in this, and I think that's what makes it so good. It just makes it like heart pumping and thrilling and fast paced, and yeah, I can't wait to reread it and like confirm my joy and excitement for this book. Okay guys, we are down to my favorite book of 2019, and guys, this book, I can't think about it too hard because it will make me cry. And when I've talked to you guys about it before, it has made me cry. My favorite book of the year is After I Do by Taylor Jenkins Reid. First of all, this is probably my favorite cover of all of Taylor Jenkins Reid's books, probably of all time. It's about a married couple that have been married for a few years, and they're kind of having some miscommunication. They're kind of getting on each other's nerves. So they decide to take like, instead of just saying like, let's get divorced and be done with it, they decide to make a pact. They say, we're gonna take a break from each other for 1 year. So it's like a year off. They can do whatever they want to in that year. They can date other people, have sex with other people, whatever they want to do within that year. But then a year from the day, you know, that they decide that, they are to come back together and decide what the next step is. So they take this year apart, and following Lauren over this year, and see, I'm going to start getting emotional about it, and I'm going to try not to. She really embarks on this journey of self-discovery, but it leaves a lot of time for reflection and what her marriage and what Ryan, her husband, means to her and what's important to her. I love some of the like surprising bits that are thrown in, and I don't know, it's so magical, you guys. It's so good. If you've read like some of Taylor Jenkins Reid's other stuff and you haven't read this one, like, you need to read this one. This is by far my favorite Taylor Jenkins Reid, and that's saying something, because there's been other years that her books have been on my top of the top list, and it just, she reigns supreme in my book. There's no touching her contemporary romance stuff. It's just, and I love it. Oh my gosh. When he writes her that letter, like when they decide to take the break, let me read it to you. Dear Lauren, make no mistake, I do love you. Just because I don't feel the love in my heart doesn't mean I don't know it's there. I know it's there. I'm leaving because I'm going to find it. I promise you that. Please do not call or text me. I need to be alone. So do you. I'm serious about this time away. Even if it's hard, we have to do it. It's the only way we can get to a better place. If you call me, I will not answer. I don't want to back down from this. I will not go back to what we had. In that spirit, I wanted to wish you a happy birthday now, even though I'm a few weeks in advance. I know 30 is going to be a hard year, but it will be a good year. And since I won't be talking to you on the day, I wanted to let you know I'll be thinking of you. Be good to my boy Thumper. I'll call you in 2 months to discuss the handoff. Maybe we can meet at a rest stop like a pair of divorced parents, even though we are neither. Love, Ryan. P.S. I fed the beast dinner before I left. So yeah, so he was going to take the dog, I guess like after like 2 months, they said, but then she ended up like not doing that. So yeah, they didn't see or talk for a year, and the plan was a year after to get together and talk about like where do they go from here. But I don't want to spoil anything. It's so good. Another book that I really want to reread in the new year. But that is my best and worst of 2019. I hope that I talked about some books that you were expecting me to talk about, and I can't wait to hear what you thought of my best and worst in the comment section down below. But that's all for today's video. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you're all having a lovely day or night, and I'll see you guys again in another video very soon. Bye.